You are listening to An Awakening podcast. This is an adult conversation about local, worldly and otherworldly topics. Be prepared, there is some swearing in the podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to Awakening. This week we'll have Vivian from
Hydroease
in Dundonald. I've been up a few times myself, and so what I'll do, I'll just let Vivian blather away here and tell you her story herself.
Letting me blather away?
Yeah, go on, you go.
My name's Vivian McKinnon, originally from Scotland, and moved to Northern Ireland from Edinburgh, just outside Edinburgh, in 2010. Opened Hydroease in 2015. So I suppose a wee bit of my background, I grew up in Scotland. My mum wanted to be a psychiatric nurse, and that was kind of cut short for her when she got married and started having kids and stuff. She'd had quite a troubled background herself, quite a lot of trauma and stuff in her own childhood, and then my sister had a couple of miscarriages, and then had a wee boy that died at 6 weeks, and then had me. So I was supposed to be a wee boy. So the first thing I kind of was born into was disappointment, rejection, all these things, because my mum was so desperate for this wee boy. So when I was about 8 months old, I fell down a flight of concrete stairs in a baby walker, and luckily I was still really young and my bones hadn't fused and formed yet. There was loads of swelling and stuff. So it's kind of set the tone for quite a traumatic childhood. So by about age 8, I had experienced all different types of abuse. Not directly at the hands of my mum and dad, but just through being left in vulnerable situations. And, it was the 70s, there wasn't the things in place that there is now. So at 8 years old, I was introduced to alcohol. 13, I was introduced to cannabis. And they were great escapes for me to avoid things that were kind of going on and what was happening. So by 15, I ran away. I then was pregnant and married. By 18, I was in police protection by age 20, and my husband was done with attempted murder and kidnap, and so there was all sorts of things going on. In my early 20s, I was then introduced to cocaine, amphetamine, ecstasy, again, just lots of really good coping strategies. And people say they're negative coping strategies, but they're coping strategies, and I never believe.
Strategies for what you have at the time.
Yeah. And I never believe a coping strategy is a negative thing. Mm-hmm. So I found loads of ways of moving away from pain, and I suppose never really kind of identified how and what it would be like to move towards pleasure. It was always, I want to make sure that never happens again. I want to make sure, so, I would go from gambling to being really promiscuous, to taking loads of coke, to drinking loads of alcohol, to limiting the food that I was eating, to purging. So there was lots of things going on. When I was about 29, I woke up one morning and felt slightly unwell. Within about 6 hours, I was completely unconscious and had been rushed into hospital. And they thought it was suspected meningitis. They'd done lumbar punctures and done all these blood tests and all these different things, and everything came back completely clear. So they were a bit baffled. So after a couple of days in intensive care, kind of opened my eyes, and again within sort of 5-6 hours, I was like, right, I need to go home. I need to get back to looking after the kids. I need to get back to. So there was loads of things going on in my head, but then there was the real negative internal critic that was saying, oh, you've fucking done it now, look at the state of you, you're a disaster as a mum, no wonder your mum never loved you, no wonder this, no wonder that. So there was loads of things going on. But there was another voice there that was kind of going, you need to stop this, you need to stop this. And I remembered when I had been about 4 years old, I had been, I don't know what had happened, but I remember running away from something and being really scared and lying in this long grass, and my heart almost pumping out my body. And I remember lying in the long grass and watching myself coming out of myself, turning around and looking at myself, and then almost just disappearing. And I remember there sitting thinking, I wonder what happened there. I wonder what kind of, because I always felt like someone had kind of left me at that point. So that was in 1999. I started to listen to that voice that was kind of saying, please stop this. And I was kind of going, I know how to continue on this path and ultimately end up dead, because it's what I've always done. And it was the path that I had travelled along a lot. So I knew how to do that. I knew how to avoid pain. I knew how to be really independent. I knew how to live my life that enabled me to have that safety and security and stay away from all these things that hurt. But I never knew what it was like to step into vulnerability. I never knew what it was like to actually choose vulnerability and choose change and kind of just put myself up and surrender myself for whatever it was that was going to happen, and to sit in uncomfortableness and to be in my own darkness. So I decided to give that a go, and I volunteered for a charity. So I volunteered for this charity who had worked with children who were in the care system. So it was children who were making that transition from being looked after and accommodated to independent living. And I absolutely loved it. And I think there was that real kind of connection with them where, as I was growing up, we were always kind of told, my dad was always saying, you know, don't tell anybody about your mum's drinking. I mean, we lived in a wee village. She would get drunk and fall in the street and be lying in puddles, and people would be at the door going, your mum's up the road. But my dad still thought that we could keep it a secret, because it just... so it was really confusing. So I kind of grew up with that, like, on this side of the door, keep secrets, don't tell anyone, you'll get in trouble, this is, you know, we'll manage this ourselves. But then when I was on the other side of the door, my dad was very much like, don't lie, do your best, never think you're better than anyone else, kind of just bumble along, keep your head under kind of thing. So going working with these kids in care, I really felt that, you know, that I could offer, like, a lot of what I do is about intention and purpose. So I kind of had the intention that, you know, I think I've got something that I can offer these kids. I think that although I was never in care, it was by the skin of my teeth that we were never in care. So there I met this guy from Sweden called Lucas, great guy, and he said to me, I never really chatted to him much about my background and my childhood and stuff, but I think he just knew there was something, there was a darkness in me that inevitably, I suppose, made me so good at what I was doing at that time. And he said, Viv, you would really benefit from flotation therapy. And I was like, sure, what was that? So went along and went to this place in Edinburgh, got taken into the room, and it was one of the old style kind of flotation tanks, which looks like a big sort of egg, and you lift the lid and you climb in and you close it. And I remember looking at it and thinking, fuck me, that looks like a coffin. Like, I'm not going to climb in there. Like, I made a decision in 1999 that I wanted to live, that I was going to, you know, that I wanted to change my life and stuff. I'm not climbing in a coffin. But again, there was that wee voice that was like, just get over yourself, Viv, get in and try it. So it took me a good maybe 5-10 minutes, and I was like, right. So I got in and I lay there, and then I was like, oh, holy shit, this is like, I have to spend an hour here by myself with my own thoughts, with nobody else and no connected to anything. And then I was a bit like...
No phone.
Well, that was 2004. So I didn't even think I had a mobile phone at that point in time. But I was just kind of like, oh, fuck, I'm hearing my own thoughts. But then after about 5 minutes, I was kind of like, oh, here, this is actually quite nice. And then what happened, still to this day, I do not know. But I just know that I lost the sensation of my body, the good cop, bad cop in my head, the million thoughts, the racing ideas, like my brain works really quickly. There's loads of things that I'm always like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And then I just had almost like this outer body where I could see myself. There was a doctor's surgery had just closed in the village that I lived in. And I could see myself in this, what looked like the doctor's surgery, almost like floating through the walls, and there was people like floating, and there was flotation tanks, there was therapists doing one-to-one work, there was a creche out the back with kids in it. I then kind of floated through, and there was like, in the reception, there was like a reception, a booking diary thing, and it had like NHS clients in on Tuesdays and Thursdays for addiction and all these different things. And this all belonged to me, and it was my therapy centre, and and then I heard this knocking at the door and this voice, "That's your time up!" And I was like, fucking hell. I jumped up and I got out the water, and I was in the shower, and I was like, oh my God. It was like that part of me that had kind of disappeared when I was 4 years old. It was almost like it was straight back in. And I remember in the shower standing thinking, fuck, I've got work to do. Like, there's shit to be done, and I need to get my finger out and get it done. And I came away from that experience kind of going, oh, I don't know what happened there. And I felt really light, and I felt, by that point, I had been carrying quite a bit of pain. Like, some days I would feel like my nails had been pulled off. Like, I remember saying to one of my friends one night, my earlobes are agony. And she was like, your earlobes? And I was like, honestly, like, I just feel pain in the strangest of places. But obviously it was the trauma that I was carrying from, you know, from all the stuff that had kind of happened in my childhood and then my sort of early adulthood. So I left there, and I remember the next day thinking, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to open a business, and I'm going to do that. And then there was a wee voice that was like, how are you going to do that? You left school at 15. You're a fuck up. You never done. But there was this, and the wee voice that had been quite quiet up until then was like, well, we'll go back to school and we'll go back. So went to college, studied health and social care, and thought, you know, to understand the models that underpin everything that's in our health and social care system, I need to kind of understand that. I need to know what's going on. So at that point, my mum passed away at 62 from internal organ failure, alcohol use. And that kind of set me back a bit, and kind of set my recovery back a bit, because I was managing to start to have a better understanding of who I was. Went for counselling and it didn't work for me. Went for CBT, just didn't engage in it. So I stepped back into that silence of trauma.
CBT?
Yeah, cognitive behavioural therapy. So I stepped back into that silence of trauma, because I thought, fuck, I've just told these two people of all the things. I mean, the counsellor, when I told her some of the stuff that had happened, her eyes just got bigger and bigger. And almost like that shock horror, like, and I never even told her half of the stuff, because I thought, this is going to totally freak her out. So I was just like, nah, so I stayed in the silence of the things that had happened and never really spoke about many things. Since I was a kid, I was able to kind of lucid dream and stuff like that. And so there was lots of things that I was kind of going, fuck, I'm not telling anybody that. They're going to think I'm away with the fairies. So I, from studying health and social care, went to university, looked at social sciences, and became really interested in human dynamics. Became really interested in why do we become a different person depending on who we're in front of? Because for a lot of my life, depending on who you were, depended on who I was. So I could quickly become a chameleon to be whatever I thought it was that you wanted me to be. And I firmly believe that's from being able to adapt and adjust to the energy that was in my house when I went home from school as being a kid. Because where my mum's voice came from, or the tone of her voice, or who was in the house with her, told me what my next step was. So every time I walked in the house, I would go, it's me, and I still do it to this day. And wherever she was, it was like, right, yep, it's safe to proceed, or right, I'm going to go in and go straight upstairs to my bedroom, or I'll just dump my bag and get back out of here. So I was really interested in that. Got really interested in energy, got really interested in how we create our models and how we operate based on what we've been shown. So I became really interested in how we're nurtured and how we can take on other people's pain and anger and fear without ever really questioning it and going, does this actually belong to me? Is this actually my fear and pain, or is this a model that I've been shown by someone else? Then came across neuro-linguistic programming. So neuro is your 5 senses. So linguistic is how we construct our speech, both internally and externally to others. So you can tell a lot about someone by the way they construct their speech. You can tell how they're processing things. So if I was to constantly say things like, oh, I see what you mean, or can you visualise that for me, or let me tell you a story, then what that would tell me is that someone who's operating very much around how they're a visual, their vision is their dominant sense. Or if someone was to say, you know, that rings a bell, or that sounds about right to me, or can you hear what I'm saying? Then that would tell me that someone's they're more auditory dominant. So I became really interested in that stuff, and then I thought, right, who invented this shit? Because I found out it was Richard Bandler and John Grindler. Richard Bandler operates in London, so I was like, right, I'm going to go to London and I'm going to do some study with him. I've done some studies with him. Met Paul McKenna, who's a hypnotist, got into hypnosis, done a master practitioner in hypnosis, done a diploma in clinical hypnotherapy, and became really interested in altered states and altered states of awareness and altered states of consciousness, and how we almost, like, we're all hypnotised. We all go around hypnotised all the time by the programmes and the experiences that we've had in the past. So that really started to interest me. From there, I then studied Havening technique, and the Havening is a psychosensory approach, so it involves human touch, And I was like, fuck, this makes perfect sense. The one thing that's been missing from therapy for a long time is touch, is human touch, because years ago, you know, people like Sigmund Freud and, you know, it was kind of like everybody just wants to shag everybody, and that's at the root of everything. So therapists became very much like, this is my space, this is your space. And it became, I think, for me anyway, in the experiences I had, it was very much, I am in my seat here, you know nothing about me, but I want you to tell me everything about you. So I kind of was like, you know, that I think there's a different way of approaching things. When I came to Northern Ireland in 2010, I worked for a CERT, which is a community education programme around drug and alcohol and mental health and suicide. A great organisation. And by then, I was kind of going, right, I really want to work in, you know, addiction and mental health. But why? Do you know, what's my intention for it? Is it because there is something in me that I still need to heal and feel that that's where I'll find it? Or is it that I genuinely feel I have something that I can give back to this community? I had to be kind of wrestle with my internal process and I said, no, it's definitely that I feel I have something to give back. I've learnt a lot. I know a lot of stuff that helped me, and I feel that that could potentially help others. So the more I was chatting about the things that I'd learned and, you know, my view of the world, people were going, fuck, that makes sense, Viv, that makes perfect sense. When I worked at a CERT, I worked at quite a strategic level and it was great and I really enjoyed it, but, you know, I was sitting in the room with like I was sitting at meetings with like PSNI and the road people and community gatekeepers and all these different peoples looking at community plans and then there would be a bit about drugs and alcohol, and that's when I would have my input. So I was kind of going, do you know, I want to be the person at the coalface. I want to be the person, you know, at operational level. So I then moved over to FASA, which is the Forum for Action on Substance Abuse and Suicide Awareness, and worked with them up until 2015. At that point, it was just like, oh, I've had a float tank to put these people, you know, just to support these people's journeys. Because I never believe therapy should ever be done to someone. It should be, you know, it's a case of you walking alongside someone. Yeah. If someone's in dark, you go and sit in the darkness with them. You don't blaze in and stick the light on. So I then, in 2015, opened Hydroease and brought flotation to Northern Ireland. So the flotation itself is 25 centimetres of body temperature water and half a tonne of Epsom salt.
Half a tonne of Epsom salts per bath? Yeah. That must cost a fortune in Epsom salts.
And we put in, I would say we probably top the salts up at least once every sort of 3 weeks. So we're putting 1 or 2 bags in every 2 to 3 weeks. But it's an amazing therapy. And then started doing, you know, working one-to-one and then, you know, working one-to-one with someone.
What do you think of popularity of? As soon as I heard about this, I went, oh, yeah, I need this. You know, and I think there is people like that. You know, my son's the same. Oh, yeah, I'm a friend. Oh, I have to have this. But what do you think it is that's making it so popular?
In 2014, I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Tipping Point. Have you ever read it?
No.
So he talks about how ideas and viruses and engineering and various different things, he talks about how they hit a tipping point.
Oh yeah, I totally believe that.
So he talks about...
It's like when they talk about Galileo, the telescope, no, it was actually invented about half a dozen times around the world at the exact same time. Same equals MC squared. When the time's ready, is that this? You know,
totally.
Yeah.
So in this book, Malcolm Gladwell talks about hush puppy shoes and how hush puppies were only selling like a few thousand pairs a year, and they were just about to go bust. And this really cool gang in New York, a couple of the guys in this gang got these hush puppies, and they were like, oh, they're dead comfy and they're cool and blah. And then other people who were kind of watching what that group of young sort of hipsters, I suppose we would call them now, in terms of fashion and in terms of leading the way in music and things like that. And so people started buying these hush puppies because they were wearing them. And then people outside New York City were then buying these hush puppies because it was starting to be a trend and blah, blah, blah. And within the space of a year, I think hush puppies went from selling like 2,500 to 25,000 pairs to 250,000. And now hush puppies, we all know hush puppies, everybody knows hush puppies all around the world. They hit a tipping point. They hit a point where it was just like boom, and they became the norm, they became popular. He talks about HIV and how HIV went from being, it was a disease that was very much within the gay community.
Yeah.
And then it was within the gay community and the intravenous drug using community. And then it grew and grew. And now it's at a tipping point. And everybody now is at a risk of catching AIDS or HIV if you're not careful in what you're doing. So again, he talked about, in terms of a virus hitting tipping point. He then talked about, the clean-up of the New York subway and how it used to be a completely no-go area. And it's called the broken windows effect. And if you live in an area that has broken windows, you're generally at a higher risk of committing crimes yourself because of the environment that you're in. And he talks about 3 different types of people. So he talks about mavericks, he talks about connectors, and he talks about salesmen. So your mavericks are your people who are out there blazing a trail. Your connectors are the people who go, you need to speak to such and such and blah, blah. And then they collaborate and they create something. And then what happens is other people collaborate around that. And then you've got your salespeople who watch what the mavericks are doing, who see the connections the connectors are making, and they're like, we could really build this. So at every part of the book, I was going, God, I can see a part in my personality like that. So I found a really good way of using all this stuff. And then I thought, do you know what? Floating is going to hit a tipping point. Now, at that point, I had been floating since 2004. But when I moved over here in 2010, and I was going back and visiting, I would go back and have a float. But then the longer I was over here, the more people wanted to see me when I got back home. So to get to the float centre was taking me like a good half day, because it was like an hour and a half travelling there, an hour and a half in the centre, and then an hour and a half coming back. So I was floating less and less and less. And Northern Ireland never had anywhere that I could float. There was a place in Omagh.
Skillers, so years ago, I remember something.
There was, and again, there was one in Bangor for a while, there was one in Newcastle for a while. But I think until you really understand what it is that you're selling, until you understand, like, I don't think there's a question about floating that anybody could ask me that I either wouldn't know there and then, or wouldn't be able to get the answer to within the space of an hour or so. And I think that's the difference. It's knowing what it is that you're doing. Yeah. And after I read that book, I was like, flotation's got to hit a tipping point. At that point, there was a huge shift in people moving towards mindfulness and meditation. And
still is.
Totally. Yeah. And plant medicine, and people moving towards alternative ways of thinking about how to create better health, physical, mental, the whole thing. And people, I think, are being really curious, and people were starting to really seek out answers from different places. And I was like, this has got to hit a tipping point. Within the next kind of 5 years, I reckon people are going to really know about this. And then we opened in 2015, and here we are in 2020, and it really has taken off. I think that there was, in 2010, there was something like 83 float centres in the States. By 2015, there was over 500.
Oh, yeah. And there's so many small, I know there's very small towns in the States, maybe 3 or 4. Yeah, very small towns, yeah.
But we're not.
But do you not think it's also to do with just their lifestyle?
I was going to say that. It's exactly what I was going to say.
We're surrounded with all this electronic equipment and
we're not supposed to live.
And all sorts of bloody nonsense.
We're not supposed to live the way we live. No, do you know, when you think that, we went, man evolved thousands and thousands of years ago, do you know, and even things like our fingers still prune when we go in water for long enough. That's it, because we go through osmosis. Our fingers prune to help us catch fish, to help us climb rocks when we're wet. Do you know, we evolved, and we've not. It's not like we get wheeled in every 100 years and updated and have our software all updated. But when you look at how our life's changed, especially in terms of, the industrial revolutions. I mean, we're in the 4th industrial revolution now, which is artificial intelligence and human computation. We're moving into, started off as steam, and then it moved to electricity, and then it moved to the internet and stuff like that. We've not evolved to keep up with that.
No, not fast enough.
And our minds and our bodies are going, what the fuck is going, we're not even lights.
It's like at the minute, we're sitting here, but, I know we're both concerned with 5G. I don't know much about it, but I know I'm concerned about it because I was with Jack, my friend. We're with a roof garden up on the bottom of the Springfield Road in the top of the mill there. Yeah. And I kept bees on it, and he was setting up a veg in it. And we went up there working away at the big antennas, two men, and I was chatting away. And one of the questions I asked was, "Oh, is that 5G? Is that it switched on now?" And the guy just turned around and looked at me and says, "I wouldn't be fucking standing here if it was." And this is the guys that's putting the bloody stuff in. Mm-hmm. Now that there is enough to worry me, you know. But I think that, you know, leading up to this, there's been so much electronics and like kids sitting there in their fucking bedrooms, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They don't know how to look you in the eye or stand up straight or hold your fucking hand or shake your hand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And where the likes of the tanks and that, you're getting away from that. Mm-hmm. Even though it's only for an hour or two. What is a normal float?
Usually an hour to 90 minutes. 90 minutes are like our members float.
So, what's actually the procedure when you go into your place for a float? What is it?
Sure. So, people generally come to us through, our biggest thing is word of mouth. So it's somebody else going, "Oh my God, I had this amazing thing and you need to come." So, or they come in through the website. So you come in and we do like a waiver with you. And it's just to say that you won't piss in the tank, that you won't not just recently dyed your hair, you've not got uncontrolled epilepsy, or the only two things really we in terms of that we're concerned with is uncontrolled epilepsy and anyone who's titrating from one medication to another for something like maybe schizophrenia. And again, it's just because you're going to be in the dark and all these different things. So you then, you sign your waiver to say that you've not recently had a tattoo or dyed your hair or wearing fake tan or anything like that. You then go through. We would show you where the bathroom is and we would show you where the post-float room is, because we offer a room when you've had your float for you to chill out and just, because sometimes it can be an experience that people, like my experience when I first came out, I was like, holy shit, what just happened there? And I had to sit for a while to really kind of gather myself and even just sit and appreciate the fact that my head was empty, which it had never been. That I had no good cop, bad cop. I had nothing, no thoughts at all. And that for me was like, whoa, this is powerful stuff. So we have a post-float room. We always encourage people to go to the toilet before they go for a float, because you're going to be lying for an hour. When you go through and into where we have the float rooms, you go through, you take your shoes off before you go into the float room. And again, it's a complete wet room, so it's just like a swimming pool, you know, the area for a swimming pool. So you go in, you completely strip off. So we recommend that you float naked. And again, it's so that your unconscious mind, like every second of every day, we're comparing and contrasting everything that's happening now to things that have happened previously to give us a picture of our reality. Hence why everybody's reality is so different. So if you're in there and your unconscious mind is trying its hardest to compare and contrast, it'll find something that's familiar. So it'll say, oh, well, I have a swimsuit on. This is, this is clothes, and it'll give you I'll give you almost like a benchmark, where if you float completely naked, it means that you have the full experience where you can just drift off.
I would think the same meditation as well.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I mean, flotation's like, meditate. You know yourself, it's like meditation on steroids. Mm-hmm. So you come in and so you get undressed, you shower just to wash off any body oils or any creams or anything like that you have on. Put in your earplugs, and then you get in, and it's 25 centimetres of body temperature water and half a ton of salt. You then just lie back.
Sorry, explain that. 25 centimetres deep. Mm-hmm. Of body temperature, which is what?
Body temperature.
About 40, I suppose?
No, because your temperature is normally about 36, 37, 36.6 or something like that. We have the water sitting at 34.9, 35, something like that. But it's because your skin temperature cools slightly, like your body temperature cools slightly as it comes to the skin. So it's more skin temperature. So is that then when you're lying there, the water, it's a controlled environment, so the water, the air and your skin is all the same. Mm-hmm. So again, when you're lying there, the first thing that happens is your unconscious mind's going, hang on a minute, am I sitting? Am I lying? Am I standing on my feet? Where's the connection went? Because you are just suspended on top of the water. Now, the last time your body and your mind felt like that, you were in the womb. So the unconscious mind's going, right, when did I last not need balance? Now, the first thing we learn is balance. When we're born, the first thing we try and do is lift our head, and then we suss that we can, oh, right, I can lift my head. So we kind of lock that in and we're like, right, and we start to learn our balance from there. So the unconscious mind's going, hang on, when did I last not need balance? So again, that's when the unconscious mind just starts, or the subconscious mind, whatever you want to call it, starts to kind of go, right, hang on, what's going on here? So it'll start to look for other cues. So it'll start to look at, can I see, hear, feel, smell, taste, anything? And it's like, nope. So what happens is the visual cortex starts to kind of shut off. So then the mind will start to ask questions around, well, hang on, where did I end and this environment begins? Like so you then start to lose sense of your body. So what then happens is the 80% that you use, basically getting yourself up and about and, kind of fighting gravity, I suppose, then there's no need for you to use that energy. So that energy then turns inwards, which activates the blood flow and stimulates the lymphatic and the digestive system. So basically the inside of your body starts to do a rapid detox. It starts to, it'll start to, any lactic acid that you have stuck in your muscles, or it'll start to soften the muscles and release. So you'll start to maybe hear popping across your neck and shoulders. You'll start to maybe hear your stomach gurgling. Because all that weight's been lifted off your physical frame, your whole skeletal structure will start to crack and creak, and because it's not got anything weighing on it. Mm-hmm. At which point you can then, so we have people that come out and they see, so like when I'm floating, like I float at least once a week, and sometimes I'll be in there and I just see lots of different colours. Sometimes I'm in there and I just have really, really cool ideas. Other times I'm in there and I'm just out, within 5-10 minutes I'm away, and the next thing I hear is bing bong. So at the end of the session there's a bell that goes off to tell you that that's the end of the session. But it's just, it's like nothing else. There's no other environment you can put. In fact, I'm telling lies, there is another environment you can compare it to. Deep sea divers who've been in have said it's similar to when you get to a certain level under, when you're diving. It's that same kind of weightlessness, that same kind of feeling that you get. But it's just an experience like nothing else. And it just gives your body and mind that chance to kind of go, because we get so many messages from our body that we just ignore, because we're programmed to. When we're kids and we're in school and we put our hand up and we say to the teacher, "Miss, I need to pee," and the teacher says, "Yeah, you'll wait till break time. You'll wait till you're not going for a pee now." So the mind then says to the body, "Shh, like we're not listening to you." And then, or you're at home and you say to your mum, "Mum, I'm hungry," and your mum's like, "You can't be hungry. It's only 11 o'clock. You've no long had your breakfast. You'll wait till lunch." And again, the mind says to the body, "Shh, we're not listening." So we grow up, and I think it's one of the things that I see now that's impacting society massively, is we've stopped listening to our bodies. We've stopped listening to, the wee niggle we get in our back, where the body's saying, "Do you know what? You need to take it easy. You need to slow down a bit." But the mind's going, "Get to work, take the dog a walk, get the kids fed, go shopping, go and visit your mum," and and we've just kind of disconnected.
I think it's a lot to do with society, isn't it?
Totally.
We're pushed towards that disassociation. And I know what you're saying. Yes, there is times you just need to say to hell with it and lie down, have a rest.
That's it.
But more and more people are not getting that.
Mm-hmm. And when you think,
and to have to, physically sort of say, right, I'm going to book myself into that, to your place, whatever, and take that time, and it's shocking that people have to actually push themselves to that limit just to get away and escape from this constant
and 1 hour
barrage of shit.
1 hour is 4% of your day. Like, fuck's sake, if you can't give yourself 4% of one day at least once a month, there's something seriously wrong.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's even like we're always, like, we've become human doings. We're always doing something. Mm-hmm. And we're always, like, my wee boy says to me maybe about 3-4 months ago, for the first time ever, "I'm bored." And I was like, I felt so accomplished as a parent. I was like, "Dancer, my wee boy's bored." There's no harm in being bored. Do you know what I mean? Sitting, doing absolutely jack shit and having nothing to do, because we constantly think that we have to be doing something. And again, it's because, nowadays anyway, we've got the kids out and they're up and they're doing this, and I think there's a real solace to be found in being bored and just sitting doing nothing. And I think, you know, it's...
I love it.
Aye, so do I. I love just... I take a Monday off, so I only work 4 days a week, and I try and fit in everything I can in the 4 days. And on a Monday, I drop the wee boy at school, and then I pick him back up at 2, and I have the afternoon with him, just me and him. And we go up to Mount Stewart and go a walk with the dog, or we go in for hot chocolate or something. But Monday morning, most of the time I just lie on the couch and scratch my arse. Do you get what I mean? It's just like, just take that time.
People have got away from that. And I mean, they think they have to be busy all the bloody time.
That's it. And I think there's a huge thing now about, especially in our time now with social media, and everything's about everybody's life's on show, everybody's on parade, everybody, you know, and I think there's a huge push towards fitting in. You have to do this to fit in, you have to do that to fit in. It's like we've lost that sense of belonging. Like we need to belong before we fit in. And if we're constantly fitting in, then we never really belong anywhere, because we're living to other people's standards, other people's levels that they've set. And you know, it's for the amount of young people that are just absolutely miserable in their existence because of it, that I think that taking that time to really kind of go, right, hang on a minute. I mean, a lot of the time in the therapy room, one of the questions that, in fact, a lot of the time I would ask is, well, so who are you? Tell me who you are. And for me, discovering that question meant that I had to then also address, well, who have I been? So, like, we all have versions within us. We all have, like, I have Vivian, who's the scared, vulnerable child. I have Vivian, who's the disengaged teenager. I have Vivian, who's the single parent. I have Vivian, who's the professional woman. I have Vivian, who's the sister, the mother, the cousin. There's all these versions.
But do you not think, it's just putting it out there, that, yes, you have that, and I would have the versions of me, but do you not think that young people now are losing that? You know, for the simple reason now that young people, there's no debate among them or anything. Because if they think that their thought is outside the mainstream,
that's it.
They don't bring that thought up. They stay quiet.
And that's it. And that's about fitting in. Yeah. It's not about belonging. Yeah. And finding, like, my daughter's 22 and she's just class. Like, I always say, see, when I grow up, I want to be Hayley. Because if Hayley's got something to say, right, wrong or indifferent, she'll say it. And she's really good at kind of, but that's my perspective. That's that belongs to me. You know, and if you're happy to share yours, you're happy to share your thoughts and stuff with me. And just because I don't agree with that, doesn't mean to say that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong or I'm right and you're wrong. It means that we have, and again, that comes down to the filters that we have and how we are nurtured as we grow up, and the lessons and the messages that we get from the people around about us.
But we're not just getting our messages now from Facebook. You know what I mean? A lot of kids now are getting that from parents. You know, there's this disconnect, and kids are sitting at computers and completely disconnecting. You know yourself, there's a lot of young people now don't even know how to shake hands or how to greet somebody. Or, you know, and I think we were lucky.
Totally.
You know.
And that's the thing. I mean, even although, you know, I've shared with you some of my background and stuff there, for years I hated my mum, and that's a terrible thing to say. Do you know, I remember being 15 and walking along the side of the road, and she was coming along the other side of the road, and she was steaming, and I was like, oh no. And I kind of put my face and looked away and kept on walking and never even let on that I was there. And I think back now and I'm like, do you know, that version of me back then, that was how I coped. Where now I'm like, God, my mum taught me so much about, you know, my mum taught me so much about reading people's energy. My mum taught me so much about disconnection. Now, she handed me the generational bag of shit. You know, my mum was a drinker and her mental health was impaired. My granny was a drinker and her mental health was impaired, and it probably went right all the way back. And she handed me that generational bag of shit, and I quite happily took it on and said, yep, this is my generational bag of shit now, and this is how I'll live. Until I had that near death where I went, hang on a minute, the only person that can change this is me. And then, like, through floating and doing other things, it was kind of like, do you know what, I have a choice. Like, this, everybody offers you gifts throughout your life, and they'll wrap it up to be whatever, and we accept it and think it's love, we think it's connection, we think it's honesty, we think it's integrity, respect, and all these different things. And it's almost like they give us these gifts and they wrap them in silk, and then we take them and we keep them as ours, and then when we open them, we realise they're but they're fully broken glass and dog shit. And someone else has wrapped up their pain, their fear, their sadness, their shame, their guilt to make it look nice for us. And we choose to then carry that as our pain, fear, shame, guilt, rather than kind of going, do you know what, you shared that with me and I actually don't want that anymore. And I think sometimes understanding that, but as young people now, like even like us sitting here under this light, we're not supposed to be, like, if we were to go back to how we originally evolved, you know, we're supposed to have a certain amount of daylight and a certain amount of dark, certain amount of daylight. You know, the amount of payments that we get, because you can buy floats online, the amount of payments that we get at like 2:45 and 4:18, and I'm like, fuck you doing up at that time in the morning? Do you know what I mean? Like to when people are buying floats. So people can go online and buy floats and hydros.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
So people can go online and buy, and I'm like, do you know, 3:8, what the fuck are you doing up at 3:18? Like, get to your bed. But then these are people who are so stimulated by what's going on inside their own head and trying to work things out. And they're sitting under lighting, or they're sitting on their phones, or they're sitting watching TV till crazy times, and their circadian rhythm is off. And that's one of the things in hydros that for floating is flotation resets what's called the ultradian rhythm, which is the way the mind works from left to right. And when your ultradian rhythm's set, it sets your circadian rhythm, so it's your sleep pattern. So you're able to, you know, your sleep will improve. And if you think of, like, we have a stress bucket, so in our minds we have things happen. So, and I think for young people, you know, something happens on Facebook, or somebody doesn't like their post and it's their friend, and they're like, oh my God, and then they go out in their car and somebody pulls out in front of them and they're like fucking cutting me up on the road and blah blah, and their stress bucket fills and fills and fills. If they then have a decent sleep, and they get into a nice deep sleep, they get some REM, they get down into delta wave, they get all these different things that eliminates the cortisol and the adrenaline and all the kind of stress chemicals that are going on. It means they start the next again day with their stress bucket empty. Yeah. And then so the next again day, somebody does something on Facebook and they're like, fucking imagine doing that, and somebody cuts in front of them, they get stressed again, and then they have a decent sleep and empty it all. But if they're not sleeping, and they're up all night still, and they're not having a chance and not allowing their body that rest and digest, and allowing themselves to mentally and physically clear out and go into that different mode, they're starting the next again day with their stress bucket pretty full. So it takes one wee thing, and it's like, fuck, like their world's all over the place. So no wonder we have such huge rates of suicide, we have such huge rates of just labels. Do you know, I feel that, you know, everything is disconnection. Everything is that an event has happened and we've stored it as trauma. You can put whatever label you want on it, you know, personality disorder, anxiety, depression, bipolar, whatever it is. For me, it's all disconnection. It's all human disconnection. We disconnect from ourselves and then we disconnect from everybody around about us.
I think, well, my idea is that, you know, when I look around young people, thank fuck I'm not going through all this.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? I'm an old lad. I had my day, you know, and when I was growing up, you had a bit of hope. Mm-hmm. I did. I really did, you know, because my dad went out to Korea and all, my ma, you know, and nobody was really what you would call educated. Everybody was scraping along trying to get a fucking shell, trying to stay alive. But, you know, I remember myself now, you know, there was this feeling of going into a brave new world. You know, totally. The wars are over, there were no more wars. That's it. I can get a suit and take Joan Collier's, or maybe get a wee car, and fucking get a wee mortgage, you know, but kids now don't have that hope. It's get up to your fucking room and stay there till you're 50, you know, or wait till you're mad days till you get the house, you know, and there's not many young men and women.
And that's the thing, Tom.
You know, and their whole connection is electronically, you know, and it is things like what you're doing and other types of things that would get kids, you know, to realise that they're not an electronic instrument. You know what I mean? And getting kids out into the fucking beach or whatever the hell, anything at all, you know, or teaching them, because, you know, there is that sort of.
I remember years ago when I was working for Move On, and we took a carload of kids up to Isle of Skye to a thing called Columba 1400, and it was a leadership academy for young people who've been through tough realities. And we were taking kids from, like, some of them were from Westerhales, from, you know, the Calders, like the really kind of rough areas in Edinburgh. By rough areas I mean, you know, like low economic capacity, low, you know, high rates of poverty, high rates of unemployment, low education attainment, stuff like that. And I remember going out, and we were driving sort of out of Edinburgh and heading out towards, like, further and further up north. And the kids in the car were all over the place, and the music was on loud, and they were like, yeah, we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing, and they got really excited. And the more we got kind of out in nature, the quieter the car got, and the calmer the car got. And I remember one of the guys going, what's that, Viv? And it was like a big Highland cow. Massive, big, huge thing. And I said, that's a cow. And it was like, fuck, not. That there, that big thing, the big brown thing. And I said, that's a cow. And they were like, no, the thing that looks like a... God, I can't even remember what they said it looked like. But it was like something that they'd said, like the big bison looking thing. And I said, it's a cow. They're like, it's not, look, cows are black and white. You see them on the milk cartons. And I was just like, you see them on the milk cartons? Like, what? These kids had never been out of their concrete jungles. They had never been that far to see that amount of green belt, that amount of scenery, that amount of nature, and I was just like, my God, like, I can't believe these kids are late teens, early 20s, and are just seeing Highland cows for the first time. You know, and I think more and more that tends to be what happened. And, you know, you're saying about, you know, kids getting put in a room, and then, you know, and we wonder why our kids are disconnected. Because from an early age, they've been told, you're over there, and I'm here. You know, and I think, you know, kids need, like, every single day I tell my wee boy, like, I had my son's 29, he'll be 30 this year. And I brought him up very, very differently to I have with Sonny. I mean, with Gary, I was like clubbing, and I was part of the sort of the acid house era, and the, you know, all that sort of stuff. So very different upbringing. You know, Gary would come with me to parties in the woods when he was 8 and 9 years old, and, you know, I look back now and I think, oh, what were you thinking, Viv? However, he's turned out not too bad, so it wasn't that bad. But with Sonny, you know, every single day I tell him, you know, I love you. And every day I tell him, I'm so glad you were born. And every day I tell him how proud I am of him. And, you know, because to instill that sense of belonging, to instill that sense of, we are a unit, we are here for you, come hell or high water. This is your safe place. You can always come back to here. We will always engage with you. We will always appreciate you for exactly who you are. You don't have to try and be anybody when you're in here. All you have to be is yourself. And I think that's an important message that a lot of young people just don't get. And especially, like, I think the education system as well. Do you know, it's like, how can we produce great thinkers and innovators and the people that are going to go out and completely change the world when we're saying, turn up at the same time as everybody else, wear the same clothes, sit in the same seat. Well, do you know, it's like, I just think everything needs overhauled. I think we should just scratch it all and start again.
I agree with you. I really do.
You know,
everything's messed up. There's nothing that I would say, oh yeah, that's well wrong. Nothing.
That's it.
Because when you look at it, somebody's probably getting a handshake somewhere along the way. You know, that's the way it is now. You know. Tell me this, havering. No, honestly, I haven't a clue. It's just one of them words that just came up so often lately. It's pretty incredible. It's
havening.
Havening.
Havering's a completely different thing. That's a Scottish thing, and that's just talking a lot of shite.
Yeah, I get it.
Havening is a psychosensory approach to trauma recovery, to reconnection. So we go from being in the womb to coming down through the birth canal, and we know something's happening, we know something's changing, but we feel stimulation on our... So we're still in the birth canal, but we're held tightly there. We know something's about to happen. The last thing that happens before we're born is we go from being amphibian, where we can breathe in the womb, and we have, you know, we have a different set of breathing apparatus. So the last thing that happens to us is almost like suffocation. So it's that changing from being able to breathe in the womb to being able to take our first breath. So the last thing we experience is suffocation, strangulation, and the first thing we experience is anxiety, because the amygdala, the fight or flight, is online. We are born and we're like, wah! and our hands are out here and we're like, what the fuck, what is going on? The first thing that tells us we're safe is stimulation here on our arms. So whether we are wrapped in a blanket or we are put on our parent's chest, or it's that stimulation here that tells us that we're safe. And you know yourself, if someone's upset, someone will go, it's all right. Mm-hmm. And they'll naturally rub us here. So we instinctively know that this is a soothing thing to do. On our hands, on the tips of our fingers, the middle of our finger and the base of our finger where it meets the hand, and the palm of the hand, we have acupressure points. Mm-hmm. So we have 3 on each finger and 1 in the middle of the hand. So by rubbing our hands like that, which, just rubbing our palms across each other, we're instantly activating 32 acupressure points. If you try and get a baby to sleep and you start to rub them across the forehead, or you rub them down the nose or under the eyes, their eyes will instantly start to go like this. And again, it's because it's creating a place of safety within them. So if you rub the arms, the hands and the face, it's creating that internal haven that's kind of going, I don't know why this feels really nice, but it's just allowing me to kind of come down a bit. So the science of what's happening behind that is it's inviting the mind into delta wave, which is associated with deep and restful sleep. So it's allowing the central nervous system to just start to calm down a bit. So the central nervous system being the brain and the spinal cord. So the messages that are being sent from the brain is allowing it to just come down a bit. So if you have an event and you give that event meaning based on how you're processing your own reality. So every second of every day, and again going back to how we compare and contrast information. So everything we see, hear, feel, smell and taste comes in. We are met by between 2 million and up to 6 billion pieces of information. There's no way we could process all of that. So we can only pay attention to roughly 134 bits. In order to get to that, we have to delete information that's not important to us. We have to distort information to fit our view of the world, and we have to generalise. So, like, I'm chatting to you right now, but I'm aware that there's paintings on the walls. I'm aware there's a guitar over there. There's a saxophone. I'm aware that Marty has glasses on. I'm aware that there's a mirror over it. There's so many things I can see without actually having to look at them. So, but I'm deleting that there's a mirror there. I'm deleting that, that Marty has glasses on, because right now it's not important to me. So sometimes we can have so many things staring us right in the face. I mean, things like, you go and look for keys. You're like, I left them here, and then you'll go and look, and then you'll come back to the same place and come back. And then like an hour later, you'll go back to that place and go, fuck, there's the keys there. They've been there all the time. But it's because we can only pay attention to a certain amount of information. We'll distort things to fit our view of the world. So if we believe I am vulnerable, other people are unreliable, and the world's a dangerous place, then if someone pays you a compliment or does something nice, you'll be able to kind of go, but what are they wanting back for that? And we'll distort it to fit our view of the world. So we have events, we give the events meaning based on how we're processing our reality. If you have an event that you give meaning to, and at that point your mind, there's 2 ways the landscape of your brain can be vulnerable or resilient. Resilient means that you can have an event, you can give it meaning, but you can have a resilient landscape where you kind of go, right, hang on a minute, let's think about this rationally. And then you won't store it as trauma, or you won't store it as it being an emotionally charged event. But if you have an event that you give meaning, and at that point the landscape's vulnerable and you're like, fuck, and then you add inescapability to that. Now, inescapability or the perceived sense of inescapability. I cannot get out of this situation at this moment in time. Now that could be a rape, it could be a car crash, it could simply be being at work. Exactly. It simply could be having to go to a workplace in the morning that there's a bully in that workplace, and every day you're going, fucking hell, I've got to go back in here and I've got to deal with this person and blah, blah. You're storing that as trauma. What then happens is at that point, and you're thinking, and the fight or flight, the amygdala, what will happen is it'll open. So the first time that happens, so say the first letter you open that says you're in debt, and you go, and you take that deep breath in, what then happens is in that moment, the amygdala will open, and you'll go into that fight or flight. You'll go into that, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You're not able to think. Your brain goes up into a state called gamma. And what that means is that it's processing all that information that's coming in at over 40 megahertz per second. So it just means that the brain's going into, I need to take pictures of everything that's going on here, because if I'm in a situation like this again, I need to know, because I need to be able to either move to safety or stand and fight. So you'll either get on the phone and go, fucking what are you doing sending me a letter and blah blah, or you'll go, oh no, I'll just put that in the drawer, pretend I never seen it.
That's very, very common.
Mm-hmm. So what then happens is what's called an AMPA receptor. So it's a receptor that's inside the amygdala. The amygdala is open. The receptor comes out and it'll take a snapshot. So it'll take everything you see, hear, feel, smell and taste, and it'll encode it with everything that's going on inside as well. So all your somatosensory stuff. So maybe a raised heart rate, maybe sweating, maybe loads and loads of thoughts or whatever that is. So the next time, so it sits there for safety. The amygdala shuts off and the AMPA receptor's left on the basal, on the outside of the amygdala. So what then happens is if there's anything in your environment that's encoded in that, again, in future, that it'll go, oh here, this is one of these things that's, oh, you might not be in a very safe situation here. So it could be something like you go into a friend's house and at the corner of your eye there's a brown envelope on the unit. But you know yourself that, a brown envelope, oh fuck, that's that debt thing. So the part that's been encoded has then kind of went, there's a brown envelope over there. So even though you're not paying any attention to it, you're maybe standing and then you're just like, I don't feel too well. I'm really starting to feel a bit, because you're so unaware of there's something in your environment that's been encoded that has the potential for you to feel the way you did at that point in time. Mm-hmm. So what then happens is it can run and run and run, and it'll attach itself to other things. So what tends to happen then is your world goes from being this size to being this size to being this size, and it just keeps decreasing. So it gets smaller and smaller. What happens in the havening technique is if you apply pressure to the arms, the hands and the face, say for example it's a car crash, and I was to say to you, right, I want you to think about that event safe in the knowledge that this is the last time you're going to think about that event in this way. Do you have a picture in your mind? Yep, have a picture. And what I want you to do is I want you to see what you see, hear what you hear, feel what you feel about that picture. What's the emotion that's in it? Fear. A scale of 0 to 10, how much fear is in it? Oh, it's 10, it's definitely 10. So what I then do is say to someone, right, what I want you to do is open your eyes, I want you to close your eyes. You then apply the havening technique. Now this is where I start bringing in other techniques that I use as well. So I would then start to bring in things like spectrum coaching. So I would look at colours and shapes and various different things like that. So first of all, I would get someone to, if I could take you anywhere right now, where would we go? Forest, the mountains or the beach? And they'll say the beach. Hey, what I want you to do is tell me, you mentioned the beach right away there. Do you have a beach in mind? Oh yeah, where is it? Oh, it's a beach in California. What does it look like? Oh, it's white sand and it's blue. Can you see yourself in the picture, or are you looking through your own eyes? No, I'm looking through my own eyes. So you'll be able to feel the sun on your face then. Oh yeah, I can feel the sun on my face. All the while I'm doing this. All the while I'm rubbing their arms, their hands and their face. What I've then done is I've taken their mind up into gamma because they've been thinking about the car crash. I'm then slowly but surely inviting their mind down into delta. Now when the mind goes quickly from gamma to delta, when you have activated the amygdala, it's getting really confusing, what happens is you open the calcium channels within the brain. Calcium and delta wave creates a chemical called calcineuron. Calcineuron unsticks that receptor that's on the fight or flight. So what it does is it removes the emotional component from the memory it's harvested within. It only works if you get the right event. So that root cause that has all that emotion tied up in it, that has created all the components in that receptor, once you can remove the emotional component and then go back, so I would do all the distraction stuff, talk about going to the beach and talk about this and that and blah, blah, blah. I would get them to follow my finger. I would say to them, I want you to, how do you feel now as you're sitting here? Oh, I feel calm and relaxed. Right, tell me, where do you feel that in your body? Oh, it's in my stomach. What colour is that? Oh, it's blue. Right, what I want you to do is I want you to breathe in. I want you to breathe into that blue. And every time you breathe back out, I want you to breathe back out the blue. So when you're breathing into your stomach, I want you to imagine it's creating a bubble around you. And you're breathing in the blue and breathing out the blue and breathing in the blue and breathing out the blue. Tell me what's changed on the beach. I want you to go back to that memory. Remember that car crash you had? Tell me what's changed. And more often than not, they'll say, I can't access it. Because what you've done is you've removed the emotional component. You've put all these other things in place. You've changed the neural pathways. So now when they start to think of that, what will happen is rather as them going boom, 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 setting off the amygdala, it goes boom and then goes off that way because it's now encoded with the blue, it's encoded with the calm, it's encoded with the beach. It's almost like, not scrambled the memory, but it's allowed the memory to process back where it should be because it's shut off the amygdala. Does that make any sense?
Yes. But if you're working on one specific thing, that seems like a bit of a process.
So you can do it. So that's called, what I've just explained is event havening. So I would have people who would then come to me and they would say, I'm anxious. I've just always been anxious. I don't know where it started. I don't know how it started. And that would instantly inform me this could be something that's genetically been passed on through epigenetics. So this might not be their anxiety. So going back to what I was saying about me growing up, this could be something that's been handed on. That's somebody else's bag of shit that they've handed down the generation. So what I would then do is I'd do transpirational havening. So transpirational havening is about what transpires. So if you think of, like, you plant a tree, and what feeds the tree is the actual tree. So you plant a tree, you water the tree blooms, it creates leaves and flowers that then fall, that decompose into the ground, that feeds the ground, that feeds the roots, that feeds the tree, that helps the tree to grow. So what I would then do is I would then apply the havening technique and get the person in their head to say, I am. So say it's anxiety. So they would then say, I am, and then in their head, I am, and out loud, they would say anxiety. So the body and the mind can hear the vibrational frequency of that word. So if I was to say to you, I love you, it resonates with you it's very differently for if I was to say fuck off. So the way the words vibrate, so in their head they're saying I am, and out loud they're saying anxious, anxious, anxious. And what happens is the unconscious mind will go, anxious, when were you anxious? And so it'll start to bring that up, so it'll start to bring that feeling up. If I'm havening at the same time, rubbing the hands, the arms, the face, and then I can see them getting really anxious, and I then say, right, what I want you to do is I want you to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. I want you just to notice how your body feels as you're saying that word. And then they go, anxious, anxious. I'm not sure if I am anxious anymore. Tell me how you feel. So what you're doing then is you're bringing that up almost like to a tipping point, and then it's tipping over. And it's then kind of going, no, it's actually fear. It's fear that's, right, I want you to say that, I am fear, I am fear. And then they do that and bring that to a tipping point, and then, so then I say to them, how would you like to feel? I'd like to feel calm, I'd like to feel relaxed, I'd like to feel, right. What I want you to do this time is, in your mind, I want you to say, what if? And then I want you to say, I am calm. Because simply by saying the words, what if, gives the unconscious mind food for thought. And this is how sometimes affirmations don't work with people. So if you get up in the morning and you're saying, I am happy, I am calm, I am relaxed, today will be a good day. I am happy, I am calm, I'm relaxed, today will be a good day. And the unconscious mind's gone, no, you're fucking not. You're miserable, and you're not happy, you're not calm, and you'll have that resistance from the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. But if you say, what if, and then I am calm, the body and the mind's hearing, I am calm being verbalised. But the unconscious mind's going, what if? Let me think. Well,
sense.
if you were calm, you would be, we would slow the heart rate. Hang on, body, slow the heart rate, see if that works. That actually works. Well, if you were calm, you would be, and it just starts to give answers. The unconscious mind likes to serve, but it needs to know how it can serve you best. So it makes decisions based on various different things. So the question, what if, allows that decision to be changed. But just leading nicely into vibrational frequencies, like if you are in coherence with yourself, if you have your head, your heart and your gut perfectly aligned, where if you get offered an opportunity and you go to do it, and either your head goes, I'm not into this, or your gut kind of goes, because we've all had situations that we've been in, and our heart, we're just like, my heart's just not in it. Or you kind of stand and you go, don't know, not getting a good feeling about this, and you've got your hand on your gut, or you're just like, I just can't get my head around that. We'll say these things, that instantly tells you that that's not an opportunity for you. That's not a situation that you should partake in. So if we all learned to understand better our head, our heart and our gut, and kept that in alignment, we would be in personal coherence. What then happens is when you are in personal coherence, you'll bring people into your sphere who are doing the same stuff, who are also aligned in their personal coherence. What you then do is you create a social coherence. Now, what then happens is when you create a social coherence, it means that you find yourself around people who are vibrating at the same frequency as you. So what then happens is if we can raise that on a global level and raise global coherence, which is happening. You hear about all these wars and these viruses and these terrible things that happen, but nobody's really talking about things like the Global Coherence Initiative. they have masts, they have these radars positioned all around the world to monitor the levels of vibrational frequency of people who are living in a true and authentic way. And again, comes back to the difference between fitting in and belonging. Because when you have a true sense of belonging, like, we belong to ourselves. I always remember, like, one of my favourite poets is actually Dr. Seuss, and he's written so many cool things. And one of the poems that he wrote is, "You are youer than you. This is truer than true. There is no one alive more youer than you." But we all try and be someone else. And and he also says, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And it's so true. If we all just had that sense of belonging, that sense of self, allowed our heart, our heads and our guts to totally realign, then we'd all be living an authentic life.
Yeah, well, just on that, as you're saying, but children are pushed into these things that they have to look like Cardassians or I don't even know who Cardassians fucking are, but somebody with big arse or somebody with big lips or some other
Totally
vitally important asset like that. Yeah, and to me, any technique that helps anybody try and find themselves again. Because you're saying people getting lost.
Totally. And the thing with havening that I like is the fact that you can do it content free. So sometimes when we have had an event that has shook us to our absolute core of our being, like, and I know because, like, my traumas, like, there were certain things that happened and I thought, fuck, I could never tell anybody that's happened to me or that I've done that. Like, I just could never share that. And what I like about havening is that someone can come and I can work with them content free. As long as they can create a picture in their mind, we can change that. We can remove the emotional component, we can get them. But what's nice about what we do in Hydroease is that after that one-to-one session, doing that work, we then put people into a float tank. So what then happens is we've taken the mind from gamma down into delta, and then in the float tank you go back up into theta. But as you know yourself, in the float tank, you're your own therapist. You are there with you. It's your mind and your body, making sense of your mind and your body. Because regardless of how good a therapist anybody is, we're only ever working with the mind, and we're only ever working with our knowledge of the mind and body, using the theories, the models, the papers that we've either written or read, the books we've written or read, the things that we've studied. Nobody knows your mind and body like you do. There's nobody else like us. So in the float tank, what that does is that then rises that vibrational frequency. And a lot of people will come out the tank and they'll say, God, I was jumping about mad in there. My arm was jerking and my legs were jerking. And that's because when the mind releases these emotional ties that it has, the body, because the body stores it in the same way. I mean, if you're in a car crash and at that point of the car crash happening, what happens is the front part of your brain switches off and you go straight into your fight or flight. So you have that brief period where it feels like everything's slowing right down, everything's in slow motion. And that's because your prefrontal cortex is going offline and the amygdala is kicking in. When that happens, that's when you encode all of that there and then. So say it was a car crash, so I have people that'll come in the room and they'll say, it was the 4th of August, 1994, I was driving along the Upper Newton Arch Road, there was a guy pulled out for the left in a blue car, and they can give me every detail of that. If I then say to them, what did you have for your breakfast that morning? They're like, what? I don't know. Like, well, how would you like if we could get that event that you've just told me about to be processed properly and go back in beside the breakfast that you had that morning? Would that be good? And they're like, whoa. But then, as I say, if people can't verbalise and they come and they say, they had an event that happened and I really just can't talk about it, can you create a picture within your own mind? Absolutely, it's there every day. Flashes in and out. Right, when you think about that picture, is it? What's the emotion that's attached to it? And I can just go straight from there. But also, we can haven ourselves. So when I work with someone, I teach them how to self-haven. Because see, if I work with someone and do 2 or 3 sessions and they go, I never want to see them again. Now, that might sound harsh, but for me, that's what therapy should be about. Therapy shouldn't be a revolving door. Same as medication shouldn't be a revolving door. It's cures we're looking for. We're living in a time of, there's so much shit. We want something that you're going to be able to use there and then. And recently, which was good for us, Justin Bieber, of all people, his wife was being interviewed and she was saying, he has now been taught this technique and he can self-soothe in the moment. So if something comes up for him and he feels himself getting a bit anxious or a bit, he can feel his heart rate going up, or he can feel his breath becoming a lot more kind of laboured, he just stops and starts to haven and starts, what if I was calm? What if I was calm? And she was saying, it's completely transformed, it's completely changed his life. And that was massive for Havening, because it was like, at last we're starting to be seen and accepted by mainstream as a self-soothing in the moment. And I've had a few therapists say, but surely if you teach people to heal themselves, then you're not going to have any more clients. And I'm like, I would love it if I never had another client again. Do you know what I mean? Because then it means that I'm providing people with a means that they can heal themselves. We all have it within us to heal ourselves, but sometimes we just don't know how to do it.
It's the truth.
I suppose, like for me, I think I kind of, I fell asleep without ever realising I had fallen asleep when I was 4 years old, when that version of me left my body at that time. And when I was able to reconnect back to who I was back in 1999, I suppose I then kind of woke up without ever actually realising I had been asleep. So for me, I think having an awakening and being awake and is about being present and full in who you are, warts and all. It's about kind of saying to the world, this is who I am. Fucking like it or lump it. Do you know, like, not everybody's going to get your journey. Not everybody's supposed to get your journey. But as long as you do. So I think for me, being awake is about understanding and doing what's right for you, regardless of what that means to other people. And if that means, travelling along a path that nobody else has travelled along, fucking do it. Just go and do it. Like, follow your heart's desire. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a great poem, and it's called The Man in the Mirror. And it's very much about, you've lived a life if on the very last day you can look in the mirror and actually like that person that's there and know that person that's there. So I think for me, being awake is about understanding who you are and appreciating that.
Yeah, and that understanding who you are and accepting who you are.
Totally.
And having a total self-acceptance, because isn't you going around saying you're awake if you don't forgive yourself, look after yourself, and be connected with yourself? And
a lot of that, Tom, is about minding the gap. Like we all kind of, and especially I see it quite a lot in parenting. People will say, "Oh, imagine bringing your kids up like that," or "Imagine doing this, imagine doing that," or but it's about remembering that everybody's doing the best they can with the resources that they have. But it's very much about, if you talk the talk and you say that you're living your life in this way, don't then be doing something different behind closed doors.
Oh, yeah.
It's all very well to say, oh, well, you should be doing this, and you should be vegan because it's so much better for this, and you should be this. And imagine, like, I can't believe you still eat animals or whatever. That's that person's choice.
Oh,
that's it. So it's like, I think for me, being awake is about living and let live. And the thing is, at the end of the day, opinions are like bums. We all have them, and some stink more than others. But it doesn't mean to say you have to share it all over the place.
You know?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's the truth. For me, it's just a personal journey, and I don't expect everybody to. I don't really want everybody to. I don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. That's what you want to think, but and I see people on their journeys, and I think part of the journey is getting to that place where you aren't judging people. Because everybody's doing their thing, struggling along, doing the best they can. That's all you can do.
That's it. And the thing is, perception is projection. So what we perceive other people to be, or what we see in other people, we can only see it because we have it within ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, I remember when I was about 7, I stole my best friend's chocolate bar at school, and I nicked it out of her pocket in her jacket, and I went to the toilet and I inhaled the whole thing in a one. And I got the wrapper, and I was like, fuck. Okay, oh my God, what have I done? And I stashed the wrapper in the toilet cistern and went back into the class. And at break time, my friend was like, oh, no, I've lost my chocolate bar, somebody stole it. And I was like, wasn't me, like guilty as sin, wasn't me. So I'm really perceptive when people are being dishonest. But I'm not going to go, you're lying, you're a liar and blah, blah. I can see that in them, and I can see that and it reacts an energy in me that I'm kind of like, oh, right. I know what that is. That's that this person's being it's not because I'm a dishonest person. It's not because I'm a thief. but it is because at one point I was.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And at one point, and I think when we are constantly pointing fingers out here at other people, I think we need to stop and kind of go, how many fingers are actually pointing back at us? Mm-hmm. How much about what we're seeing in somebody else is actually the things that we don't like within ourselves? And I think if we kind of looked at that and looked at the people that we clash up against, or maybe have a lot to say about, or maybe don't see eye to eye or whatever, it's exploring what part of me is it that I'm not agreeing with.
But do you not notice as the further down the road you get, the less people you have to argue with?
Aye, totally.
You know what I mean? The arguments in there, it just all falls away.
That's it. And I think as you get older, you're just like, oh, fuck that, I just don't suffer fools gladly. Yeah. Do you know, it's kind of... And the thing is, if you're in a room and there's people in that room that you do get on with, you're in the wrong room. Do you know what
exactly.
I mean?
Oh, God,
life's too short to surround yourself by people that are on a different path.
No, well, I'm surrounded by some smashing people, I have to admit. I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much indeed.
No,
that was amazing. That was brilliant. Right?
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
And remember, anyone wanting to float or heaving?
Well, the approach that I use is called RAFT, which is Reconnection and Floatation Therapy. So a lot of it is about, the first part of what I kind of do is around awareness, because it's moving from that, like a lot of us are in pre-contemplation a lot of the time. It's like, I've not got an issue, I've not got a problem, and then something happens and you go, fuck, actually. So a lot of what I do is around awareness raising, and then when you move from the awareness, you move into the acceptance, and you move into that, right, this is who I am, and this is what and I'm not going to share, I'm not going to hide this or do whatever, which then leads nicely into forgiveness, because it's about forgiving yourself for some of the decisions you've made, and then leading into gratitude. So the one-to-one stuff, as well as havening and NLP and stuff like that, has all been put together into RAFT, which is Reconnection Therapy.
Right, and we'll be putting links and stuff at the bottom of the videos and that, so you know how to get in touch. Listen again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, everybody else, for listening. Namaste.